Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Trending. Today is Thursday, June 20th. It's just a little before 10 as we're starting this morning. Hello, Joe.
How's it going, man?
I'm doing good. We have a lot to talk about today.
And it's a busy day.
It's a busy day, busy week.
Because we're like ramping up to go to France.
You and I are both going to be in France for the next couple of weeks. And so I guess we should get on the front. We're not exactly sure what's going to happen next week. We're going to try to do something while we're in France.
Yeah.
We have no idea much about the details of our schedule. We don't know what the internet connection is going to be. So we'll do our best to do something next week.
Yeah.
But no promises. We'll do our best.
It might be like kind of pioneer grade trending.
Yes. It might be very rough. But maybe we'll have some special appearances by some of our friends over there that we're going to go visit. I don't know.
That's right.
Or other team members. We'll see. We have no idea.
We certainly will not have our new sign.
Yes.
That was, because of the wonders of science, 3D printed.
Yes. Why don't you tell our friends what that is?
So this is a 3D printed sign that Mr. Terry Erzman put together. And now we have got something for the front of the desk. Like we're upgrading, man. Like we're cooking with gas now.
More scarves every week, it seems like. We got an official nameplate now.
Send your scarves in, man. We'll fill this whole room.
It's very cool. My dad is an avid 3D printer, and he made this for us, so thank you, Dad. This is very cool. Apparently it's very difficult to have a bunch of colors on one printed thing. So this is a next level 3D printed object. So
Yes.
Fun thing to add to the desk here.
That's right. Good times.
Yes.
But a lot going on in the world.
Yes.
We could talk about, there's this crazy story about two senators, I think in Vermont, that are feuding, and one is pouring water into the other's tote bag when they're not looking. It's been going on for months. We could talk about that.
Yeah, nice.
We could talk about like the 10 Commandments in Louisiana schools now. I guess they're going to have 10 Commandments in classrooms, but we'll put that to the side today.
Okay, you don't want to touch that one?
No. I mean, maybe not. It'd be worth it at some point.
Okay.
I guess we'll see how it goes, because it may be superfluous.
Yes.
If it ultimately gets voted down and whatnot. But an interesting development there.
Yeah.
But something happened a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
That was kind of unique. It's kind of like where pop culture and religion overlap a little bit.
Yes.
And it happened in a very holy site at the Vatican City.
Yes.
So why don't you tell us what happened?
So I think it was about 5 days ago. So it was not quite a week ago. So some of you may have seen some headlines that the Pope invited over 100 famous comedians to the Vatican to come visit him. So let me pull up the list here. I'm not going to find it quickly. I'll put it on the screen here. But I mean, Jimmy Fallon, Stephen Colbert, Whoopi Goldberg, Chris Rock, Jim Gaffigan, long list of comedians. If you pay attention to comedy, pretty much everyone's name that you know was invited to come to the Vatican to talk to the Pope. Yeah. And so, an unusual thing, some of the people who were there, they were quotes about like, I don't really know why we're here. This is weird. Like if you put 100 comedians in a room, there's gonna be chaos. So some of them are just kind of joking around like, why would you invite us if you don't? But we're gonna be up to no good. Like they're just kind of teasing each other, like who's gonna break some rule or who's gonna say something weird to the Pope. Or so it was just kind of, I think in the air was just kind of this fun vibe of like, is everyone on their best behavior? What's gonna happen here? So there's some kind of fun quotes that came out of that. But let me read a couple quotes from the Pope himself, because when they were asked like why are you doing this, he gave a little speech beforehand, and then all of them got a chance to go shake his hand and talk for just a minute. So here's what Pope Francis had to say. So in the midst of so much gloomy news, immersed as we are in many social and even personal emergencies, you have the power to spread peace and smiles. You are among the few who have the ability to speak to all types of people from different generations and cultural backgrounds. He said they have the ability to unite people because laughter is contagious, and it's easier to laugh together than alone.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of the quote. And I think he spoke for several minutes, and then all of them got a chance to get a little photo and meet him. So Pope, this Pope is a very interesting guy. Mm-hmm. He does all kinds of things that are very out of character for someone who's leading the Catholic Church to do. And a lot of them, I think, are cool things. Right. Like he's no one else has done this before, for sure. Right. And looking at the list of people he invited, so Colbert and Gaffigan are outspoken Catholics. They're practicing Catholics. A vast majority of these 100 people were not believers of any kind, and they're pretty open about that. Right. So that's by itself is pretty risky to invite a lot of people who disagree with you about a lot of things. Yeah. But I like that he took the opportunity to elevate levity and kindness and joy. Joy is one of our values. Yeah. So when you hear about, there's a lot of things we could talk about here. When you heard about the Pope comedian meetup, what was kind of top of mind for you?
I thought it was a grand idea, and not just because it's good to laugh, but I think he understands the zeitgeist, how it's very brittle. It's combative in the world right now. Maybe it always is, but like if there's some way that we can kind of undercut the constant battle line drawing, digging in. A shot over the bow or a shot of the bow from this party to this party. I think he thought maybe it could be a good development. I think the older I get, the more I find the value in laughter and comedy. To be honest, I felt maybe for the first several years of being a Christian, just how serious it is. This is the one and only story to believe and to know, right? And everyone needs to know because time is running out, and like there's all like this urgency that's going on. And unfortunately, if that is not balanced or faceted by just the commonness of life, it can turn into something that is counterproductive. I heard the story of a guy. We may have shared this on in the trending annals of trending before. Yes. But there's a guy who was an alcoholic, and his wife said, "You need to go to recovery," and he went to recovery. And while in recovery, of course, one of the steps in AA is just acknowledge there's a higher power, like someone who can help you. Okay. And to have serenity in your life. And so he found religion. And he got clean. And she was thankful for that. But she also noticed that he lost his laughter along the way. And so that's an unfortunate thing that can happen when people get steeped in religious thought and rhetoric is that we really are not so pleasant to be around because it's always like black and white, doomsday, predicting and these types of things. But religion needs levity. It needs comedy, and not all comedy is created equal, of course. The Bible has a lot of interesting jokes and appeals of humor from it. It's one of those things we miss because we're reading it devotionally. We've got like our E minor key music in the background, and we're in a dark place. We want to be like serious and focused. And I just remember when we were at Sterling, Diane DeFranco Kling. I loved her because we were doing a Shakespeare play once. And we were like reading through the lines, and she's like, "This would have been funny back in the day, ha ha ha." Like none of us knew, right? Because we didn't know like the social mores,
culture, the language,
the way the language would go, and stuff like that. A bunch of those things are in the scripture text, but because it's been translated from original languages to English, and we read it, devotionally or in a sacred moment, a lot of times we miss the appeal of comedy. But I do think that comedy, used appropriately, can be like great moral medicine. It's good for the soul. Anne Lamott, one of my favorite quotes ever, she said, "Laughter is carbonated holiness." I love it, man. It's holiness with a little fizz.
It's bubbles. Bubbles make everything better.
Right? And so I just think that is an important facet to a religious experience. One of my favorite exposures of this was Craig Ferguson had the Bishop Desmond Tutu on one episode of the Late Night back in the day. And I may have mentioned this before, but he had no other guests. Like he just wanted to have Tutu on the whole time. And Desmond Tutu experienced a tragedy in his life. He was in South Africa in the midst of apartheid. He led the Truth and Reconciliation movement, which would put like murderers with the people's families who they murder, and they try to like sort it out and extend forgiveness, just to try to heal their nation. So this guy knew pain profoundly. But when he got on Ferguson and he would laugh, it was the most authentic gut, like from the gut laugh. It wasn't a fake, like a spacer laugh. Like this guy knew joy. But he also knew the deep work of the gospel. And I thought this is an image that we need to capture. Like this might be what modeled Christianity looks like. Someone who has levity in his life, but also gives himself to the deep, profound work that's so necessary in this world. So, I just think there's an important place for it. I think comedy, if we overdo it or if we try too hard, some things aren't very funny. I mean, I just went to middle school camp, and that's the era of time where like you try to be funny and sometimes you just be mean. And I think sometimes politicians try to take jabs at the other side, and they try to be funny. And it's, number one, it's just not real funny. And it's just like really mean and demeaning. And so can there be a humor that is not at the expense of somebody else and that minimizes them? I hope so. I think that might be the most appropriate type of humor. But I think we're all craving more human in our lives. And I think that we see this because whenever a comedian comes into town, all of our friends show up, they post it on Instagram.
Yeah.
I guess we're seeing a day where people can quote a Jim Gaffigan line before they can quote Augustine.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm totally depressed about that. The jury's still out.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that we're tending to the soul. What I've also noticed is that comedians can tell the truth.
Yeah.
They do it in such a way where they kind of do it in disguise. And I think people do walk away from a comedy sketch confronting something that they need to confront in their life. And they did it with a spoonful of comedy. I think it goes down a whole lot easier when that's going on.
Totally.
And I think some of the best preachers out there know how to use humor as well to get their message across. And I think people resonate with it because they bring that levity in the midst of their moral teachings. And I think it's a good thing.
Totally agree. Yeah, comedy makes any communication more effective, I think.
Yeah.
When it's appropriate. One more quote, as you were talking, this reminded me of something I read this morning. So let me throw this on the screen.
Yeah.
So Pope Francis also said, how much we need to learn from you. The laughter of humor is never against anyone, but it's always inclusive, purposeful, eliciting openness, sympathy, and empathy.
I think it can be. I think if you're the people in charge, that's where humor needs to be.
Yes.
I do think, and this is something that Phil Vischer on the Holy Post brought out.
Yeah.
Like comedy actually, like stand-up comedy like we know it now, actually originated in Jewish communities and African American communities when they were the minorities of society.
Right.
When they were oppressed because of who they were and where they came from. And comedy was a way for them to deal with the constant harassment and helplessness they were experiencing. Comedy allowed them to punch up a little bit and have, at least for a moment, an experience of empowerment, a boldness in the face of all the oppression that they were experiencing. I thought that was cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that is cool.
And so learning that helped give a new appreciation to comedy's role as well.
Agreed. Because one thing I was going to say is, not all humor is like his quote. Some humor is mean. Some humor is straight up inappropriate and doesn't deserve to be anywhere. So I would say not all humor is what Pope Francis was saying here.
Yeah.
But there's another thing I was going to bring up is, we kind of hit this a little bit already, but it would have made sense for him to invite Jim Gaffigan and Stephen Colbert, people who are outspoken Catholics. It makes sense for him to pair up with those guys. Like if he's wanting a photo op, that'd be a pretty easy one that would make sense. But I think it's interesting. He also invited people like Whoopi Goldberg, David Sedaris was invited. So people who, if you know anything about them, their values do not align with Catholicism, but they still got an invite to this event, which I think is interesting. Yeah. And so I guess, do you have any take on or anything you want to add on, especially, again, the Pope referenced just the toxic, divisive culture that we're in. Yes. Can we learn from that? Like, he invited these people who blatantly disagree with him on most things. Right. And he wanted to take a minute to laugh together with them. Yeah. That's noteworthy, I think.
I think it's a bold move. I think it's something that I think is a good growing edge of the church, particularly in what we would call post-Christian societies. Yeah. So it reminded me of, when you're talking about it, reminded me of something that Pete Rollins, he's a philosopher, author, kind of a provocateur, interesting guy. Okay. But he had a church plant in Northern Ireland, and they did this thing called an evangelism tour, where they actually, as Christians, people of faith, they would go to a group of Muslims or a group of atheists or a group of Buddhists or just the other, whoever the other non-Christian is. Yeah. And they would sit down with them and they would just ask them about, some of their, holidays and stuff like that. And then they would ask him a provocative question. He would say, when you see Christians, when you think of Christians, when you encounter Christians, tell us what you see. Tell us what type of impression we leave on you. And he says the evangelism, like if those Buddhists wanted to become Christians, that would have been fine. Yeah. But what we needed most was to hear on safe turf what others see when they encounter Christians. Yeah. And we were being evangelized a little bit to understand, to kind of like the blindfold taken off our eyes about how we come across. And maybe this is a way that Francis is trying to invite not just devoted Catholics, but also people with great experiences from other perspectives and ideologies, and have a close encounter moment with them and say, what can we learn from what you see from the churches that are in your part of the world? Yeah. So I think that's an endearing thing. I think most Christians wouldn't do that because I think we're probably quite terrified about what we'd hear. But it might be something to consider for us if we want to just have a realistic picture of what it looks like to engage people outside the faith.
Yeah.
I think that won't dawn upon many Christians these days because they have quite the sanitized experience.
Yeah.
Like most of their life is around other believers. The only differences are like their eschatology, you know, like,
right.
and boy, let's not talk about that. You know, the knives come out, right?
Right.
But let's just be honest. Part of the Great Commission, part of what our God's call us to do is to go into all the wide world.
Yeah.
Not just the fringes of the Christian world, but to the wider world. And I think we would be more equipped to do so if we allowed our guards to come down, go out and take different ways home, talk to different types of people, and to ask them the honest question and then dare to listen to their feedback and response.
Yeah, so that's good. I like that too.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. I'll get you out of here on this. So what I mentioned earlier, again, that one of our values is joy. And you've mentioned that churches, Christianity, faith, we're not always great at being joyful.
Right.
I think if we're left to our own devices, we get serious, introspective, and we studious and academic, and that's kind of where I think our faith kind of left untouched. It might go that way a little bit. Yeah. But the Bible's full of, we're commanded to be joyful all the time.
That's right.
Joy is a big deal. And I think at Ridgepoint, we try to do a good job. We try to keep things light and try to have fun, and I think we do a decent job at that. But in our individual faith walks, maybe that's not something that's super common, or we could probably all grow in that. So talking about laughter, comedy, how can we elevate joy in our faith walks? Any thoughts on that? Because I think you do a good job of this. You're an Enneagram 7.
Well,
joy, fun.
Well, that is a great compliment. Thank you so much. I think that a lot of joy comes out of like a unstructured play in our lives.
Okay.
I think this is where we're like kicking it in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Maybe there's an activity going on and like somebody, falls or something like that, and they don't feel so shameful about it, and we all get to kind of joke around with one another. I think it's something that surprises us. It's more of a projectile. This is something we've talked about, more of a projectile, something that's thrown at us without us being prepared than it is a projection. Yeah. That's why I think it's so funny that the Bible has so many commands to be joyful. It's like, all right, I'm going to hunker down. I'm going to be joyful today. Like it's just
I will smile today.
That's right. And so I think we need to have some unstructured play because I think that's where joy meets us. I think that we should take ourselves and our perspectives a whole lot less seriously. We don't have to draw battlegrounds all the time. We don't have to, argue every point. We can just let it go. And I think that we have to be curious about the people who are around us. Just the other day, I was talking with somebody in our neighborhood. We were just out. I think a dog got out. So I'm like, chasing a dog down, and this person's like, oh yeah, there's like a dog 2 streets over that's always out. And sure enough, we see him on our Ring cameras all the time. And we started talking about other stuff that we get on our Ring cameras and stuff like that. And like the next thing you know, complete stranger who I wasn't totally excited to talk to because I was trying to, get this dog corralled. They probably weren't too, planning on like talking to me. Like next thing you know, we're kicking it and having a great time. And I just think it's being willing to talk to people that you weren't planning on, trying to find something that makes them excited about life and just entertaining that for a moment. And next thing you know, you walk away in a better mood, and perhaps they're in a better mood because of it. So, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Joyful people are attractive people, right? We keep talking about, we want to be a winsome church. That's a word that we keep using. We want to be winsome people. Yeah. I think joy is a very winsome, attractive characteristic. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, can you imagine what it'd be like to be in a room full of 100 comedians? I wish I could have been there just to take it all in. Like, I think it'd be so interesting. But
I think that they're pretty driven people. They seem clumsy when they do their stand-ups, but it's super planned, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I imagine they're always trying to mine for the next thing to use. Yeah. And I think it's okay. I think they're all bright.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that they could argue both sides of a argument very convincingly.
Yep.
So they're probably intimidating and scary to be around.
Probably so.
And you're not going.
I'd probably be super nervous if I was in that room, but I'd also like to be there.
I would too, and I think that it would be hilarious to see what would happen, particularly if they have to compete against one another.
Oh, man. I wish they would have had a joke off of some kind. That would have been very.
It's a joke off.
If the Pope chimes in, that would be amazing. I think his closing remarks was, "Please pray for me, not against me." He had some little thing, that was a little quip at the end. So
that's awesome.
Anyway,
yeah.
Okay, well, thanks again for watching and listening today. We'll do our best to be here in some capacity next week. The following Thursday is 4th of July,
Yeah.
so we'll probably be off that week. But anyway,
Yeah.
we'll see you whenever we can get back here.
Yeah.
How about that?
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.
See you next time.